reports. If you could briefly make reference to those, we could perhaps have Mr. Trotman and his colleague to respond.
I'm looking here for the exact bit of.
I seem to recall one of those areas had to do, you were responding to Minister Husbands, had to do with the cost of transmissions acquired locally.
I'm looking here for the,
Yeah.
but I know what they have to say about it. I need to get the information. All right, but until I find out, we can begin in the appendix, I think it is, where we had these transmissions. Yes, I found it here. There's appendix 4. You have transmissions, 24,000, right now 24, 26, 26, and the bulk of it would have been 24,260.
You can hear?
But I am saying that I went to the Transport Board as chairman in 2013. And when I got there, the cost of transmissions was between $35,000 and $40,000. The only reason, the difference of $5,000 was because the Transport Board supplies the parts, and if it didn't supply the parts, the provider would supply the parts, and it would come to $40,000. So these 2013, 14 down to 17, all of them, these are not correct. They're always 35 and 40,000. In addition to that, I went with the manager of stores and the consultant to Brazil in 2017, and one of his remits was to get parts at a lower price. So when we went to Brazil, the manager of stores, Mr. Chandler, he printed out what the costs of the various items were, and again, that you have a copy of this, you can photocopy it. And transmissions, there were two types, 35,000 and 45,000. That was the cost, and this is documented in this bit of paper here.
We can have a copy of that document.
Okay. Yeah, you can have. Sorry. Very good.
Do you want to go on to another area of specific reference in terms of your disagreement with the findings of the Auditor report, or
Yes,
would you want Mr. Trotman to respond to that particular?
Not right now.
Yes,
Mr. Bartholomew, he did a report of the work which he had done, and he has stated that in his report that the cost was $35,000. That was the cost which everybody knew at Transport Board. So these figures here, I do not understand where they have come from. And it seems rather strange that it was all down for $35,000 and $40,000, and as soon as an audit is being done, which is, from my understanding, is the very first time it was done at Transport Board, you have these figures appearing. And I will give you, this is the executive summary of what Bartholomew, the fleet manager, consultant rather, he said he had fixed 23 engines at a cost of $257,000. And the engines, if a local service provider had done it, it would have cost $690,000. So there was a saving of $433,000. He did 25 transmissions. Local service providers would have, it would have cost $875,000 if local providers had done it. And it was done in the special project for $175,000, a saving of $700,000. And he did 23 fuel injection pumps for $6,900, and if the local providers had done it, it would have been $115,000, so $108,000 saving. And this is documented in here. So I am not aware of these kinds of numbers.
Any
24.
comment, Mr. Truckman?
Chairman, I think I'll let my colleague, as he compiled the information, answer this one.
Good evening, Nigel Gibson, Senior Auditor. The information report came directly from the invoices. These amounts in here do not include VAT. We would have only taken into account what the invoice said was the cost of the transmission and the labor specific to installing the transmission. We did not include other miscellaneous items that you might have, like to remove and replace the diesel fuel filter, the bleed system, etc. So a particular invoice here for BM 25, the grand total on that is $32,000. But if you focus on the transmission and the labor for the transmission, and exclude the VAT.
So who was the provider?
The provider was Transtech Inc.
And what date?
This is the 26th of January 2015 on this particular one for BM 25.
I'm still not in agreement because the financial controller came in the board room and said there were 35 and 40. When I went to Trinidad with Mr. Bartholomew Codrington, when we met with Bartholomew, he told Bartholomew that the cost between 35 and 40,000. So I do not know where this figure came from. So it's always 35 and 40,000.
But is Mr. Gibson saying that the information came from invoices from Transtech?
They said so.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And you're saying, Mr. Wiltshire, that the information you had from the financial controllers, Ms. Sue, at the time gave a different figure?
Different figures. And from Mr. Bartholomew, he checked the magneto system. And he said 35,000. And all across the board, 35, 40,000.
Mr. Minister Jordan, you're an accountant. How would you account for that? He's checking the magneto system, or she is, and getting a different figure from the invoices that the Auditor General's office would have looked at. Paper invoices from Transtech.
That's correct.
What would occasion something like that?
Chair, I am not sure what would have, except that the Auditor General's office spoke to VAT not being included. There was also mention of miscellaneous. I'm not sure what miscellaneous means, but sometimes there could be attendant costs that are not purely the item that we're talking about. I see here costs of transmission and labor. I'm not a mechanic myself, so I'm not able to say what additional charges could be if a crane was rented or a tool was purchased to do something special. I'm not sure. Even though I do know that VAT on its own would not take a cost from 26 to 40.
Precisely so. You said Mr. Bartholomew gave a similar figure, and he would have been representing what? He would have been...
We set up a special project at Mangrove, and he was installing the transmissions, which were brought in at, when it landed at Mangrove, it would have been $7,600, cost, insurance, freight. But if you send back the core, you would get $2,000 off. Anyhow, it would have taken an hour and a half. The standard rate was $90. This is in the industry per hour. So, give or take, it would be $7,800. And the financial controller came in the boardroom and said that Bartholomew, the transmission cost $23,000. $23,000 came in, landed at Mangrove at 76. But when she came to the boardroom, she said $23,000. I do not know how she works out her figures.
So where does the figure 35 and 40,000 come from?
I don't know if she would have to tell you that. I would not know. But that is what was bandied all through the boardroom, 35 and 40, until Bartholomew came, and when he put in a transmission that cost $3,000, which I think you alluded to sometime in your report. It miraculously went up to $23,000, and I asked her to give me the workings of it. Where did you get the $15,000 extra? And she never came up with it. She said she's sticking to her words.
But she didn't provide any kind of, she's an accountant. She didn't provide any kind of documentation to the board?
Absolutely nothing. I have any minutes somewhere when she said she's sticking to her words, because she inflated the price for Bartholomew, and that is the reason why she and I couldn't see eye to eye, because...
So an accountant gives a figure that is significantly at variance with the information which you have.
That's right.
And which is corroborated by others. And you request documentation to substantiate what she's saying, and it doesn't come. And what does the board do in that event?
Unfortunately, I think that would have been sometime in 2018 when I asked for the information. I think that was the last board meeting we had in 2018 when she said she was sticking to, she was sticking to her calculations, which she never produced. And there were others too, because she had inflated the costs and sent it to the permanent secretary at MTW. And I told her that she has to revise her costs and resubmit it. And she submitted the same information. She never gave any reasons for the absence of the workings.
So subsequent to that, you had no opportunity to further pursue that
No.
there was a change in the board?
Change in party.
Changing board.
The board, yes.
Yes, Minister Husbands.
Chair, I just want to ask for a little clarification because I wasn't really, good afternoon. I wasn't really clearly following what you were saying. My understanding is that you're saying that transmissions cost between 35 and 40 according to the information that you have. Yes?
Yeah, that's right.
35 and 40. And you have invoices and documentation.
No, that
that
invoice.
supports that?
These are the statistics from the consultant who would have gone on the Magneto system. He had access to the Magneto system, so he would pull down information.
Okay. And you mentioned as well that there was an item for around $7,000, and if you sent back the item, you'd get
Yeah,
a couple of
2,000.
thousand off. Right. Why I was confused, I thought we'd seen in the report that there were reconditioned transmissions that you imported from North
That's right.
America, which came in at that price. And if you return your old transmission, you would get a reduction on the price. What I'm not clear about is that we have invoices which the auditors have checked that reflect the 23,000 plus additional items and VAT, etc., which you are stating would carry up to 35. I'm just trying to figure out what would account for that difference.
I do not know because I didn't work them out. Work with the statistics. It got to be the financial control because how can you say a transmission which comes in at $7,600 and you work out that it costs $23,000 and did not provide any workings to the board? That is my beef.
Well, no, my understanding is that there were two different types of transmissions. So some would be in the $7,000, $5,000 range, and the others were in the $23,000 range. They're two different types that you're discussing, and not that one was substitutable for the other.
No, that one that was $7,000. The financial controller said it cost $23,000. That's what she said.
Thank you. In terms of the information that we would have here, let's say we have first of all, we're dealing with two sets of transmission, first of all. One that was done by the local provider, and the others that were brought in, the ones that cost the lesser amount. So when the statistics that we have here, let's say we had a transmission for $24,000 or whatever. The actual cost of installation of the transmission could be like as much as $33,000, which might be closer to what Mr. Wiltshire was saying. $5,000 would be VAT, $2,100 would be to the installation and other miscellaneous costs. So I really, we're dealing with two different types of transmissions. The one that came in for the lower amount, and the ones that were done by the local provider. They're two different types. So I think we should bear that in mind.
I am bearing that in mind, but why is it that one which comes in gets a costing of $23,000?
No, nothing that came in will get a cost of $23,000. All these costs here.
No, I'm just not speaking to you about that.
Okay.
She came in the boardroom and said
Okay, that's something different. Okay.
it cost $23,000.
So there might have been some misunderstanding of what was going on. Because all of the information that we have here in this report comes directly from these invoices that we got from the Transport Board. And all were related to the local provider. These have nothing to do with the cheaper models that came in, the recons that came in from the United States.
I have no quarrel with that, but I wanted speaking about what was done was given the same costing as the local provider, which was $23,000.
In essence, what the chairman is talking about is not covered in our report at all. about the fact that the ones that came in at the lower price was costed at $23,000. We didn't address that at all. We only addressed the ones that were done by the local provider.
Is there any other area, Mr. Wiltshire, that you had a difference of opinion with the Auditor General's findings?
There was yes, there was I'm looking here for the inability to raise the number of buses to 200, and the Auditor General said that it was due to lack of funds and parts. I think that is what. Right. Lack of funds and parts. But that was the only contribution which was mentioned about the consultant, that he could not raise the number of buses to 200. But Mr. Bartholomew had done much more than trying to raise the number to 200. He was building engines, he was repairing transmissions. He had a whole host of things which was not mentioned in your report, sir. He was fixing starters, alternators, fuel injection pumps. I said he was servicing transmissions, sourcing cheap parts from overseas, and he was servicing the buses. And all of that is in his report. So looking at it, it seems to me to be lopsided. So I think that information was not given to you, accurate information.
But didn't Mr. Bartholomew himself express or indicate that he was unable to achieve the desired level of availability of buses because of lack of parts and financing? Didn't he himself suggest that?
It was much more than that. Sabotage.
What do you mean by sabotage?
I made it clear last time that Mr. Bartholomew was building engines, washing engines, building transmissions. And this is a classic, I think I showed you this is a classic example where gloves were forced into engines which he had built. There's only one of them. This is another one where a fuel filter, an air filter. It was changed, and then a used one, very dirty, was slipped in. And the good thing he pulled off the bus to service it. Otherwise, the engine would be destroyed.
The management wasn't able to identify those who would have done this sabotage?
No.
You have any idea who's responsible for sabotage?
I don't know. But he only came and found it and he reported the matter. Then when buses were to be serviced, he had a system whereby the numbers of buses, well, he would have about 10 or 15, and he would bring them in the morning and have them serviced. and he would assign these buses to different persons to do. And he complained that when the guys turn up to work 5:30 to start on the buses or whenever, the buses were put on the road. And that was a major concern.
What were the circumstances around the engagement of Mr. Bartholomew? How did it come to be that he was taken on as a consultant at the transport?
Well, let me start from the beginning.
As briefly as you can,
All right,
or as quickly as you can.
all right, as quickly as you can. There were a number of buses which were out of service. Quality assurance was not able to bring the totals up. And I must repeat, in 2014, when I went to Trinidad with the head of the quality assurance, the rollout, that is the number of buses going through the door or the gate at Transport Board, was 67. I understand it's about 50 now. And the major concerns were fan belts overheating and transmissions. And we went to Bartholomew to get some advice, because Bartholomew had been brought here in 1998, and the same problems existed in 1998. So between 1998 and 2014, even down to 2018, they still existed. So he was brought on as a consultant, and he was doing his best, but he got a backlash from those guys. One of the senior mechanics went and told the guys, do not support Bartholomew. He came to take away his job. As you can see here, they've sabotaged it by putting clubs in it.
He was brought on by the board?
Pardon me?
He was engaged by the board, decision of the board?
It was the board, yes.
So you're saying people in the quality assurance department sabotaged his work?
That's right.
You're identifying Mr. Codrington as one?
I'm not identifying anybody.
I'm trying to be very direct.
I'm not identifying. Things happen, nobody accepted liability or whatever.
Nobody was queried by the board
No,
as to their involvement?
we could not pinpoint anybody.
Mm. And Bartholomew was working for what? I think there was some difference in view,
And
difference in position, in statement between yourself and Ms. Sue as to what Bartholomew was being paid?
yes, Bartholomew was being paid $13,500, but Ms. Sue said he was getting $22,000
She said that
in the board and in the Nation newspaper. It was published in the Nation newspaper.
how long was he here?
How long he was here?
Yeah.
2016 to 2018.
Okay. So his contract ended with a change of board, or?
Yes. Contract was ended. And this is what was highlighted in the Nation newspaper. You can have that. Consultant getting $22,000.
Why would Ms. Sue say that?
Well, she admitted that she leaked information to me some time ago, so she was the only person who came up with that figure.
But it's one thing to leak information, it's another thing to leak false information.
Pardon me? Well,
It's one thing to leak information, another thing to leak false information.
well, the lady and she and the truth do not walk the same street.
But she was your financial controller.
Not my transport board.
The only time you all had problems with Ms. Sue was towards the end of the period of tenure of that board?
That's right.
So you had no opportunity to deal with her?
No, sir.
I've scanned the story brief. I don't see her name mentioned in the article.
No, but she was the only person in the boardroom, and I spoke to her about that $22,000.
She assumed that she leaked it because her name is not mentioned.
I
there.
know her name is not mentioned, but everything points in that direction. Because she admitted to me, I had cornered her one day, and she admitted that she leaked information.
She admitted that to you?
She admitted that she leaked information.
Okay. According to the Auditor General's report, completion dates on repairs preceded start dates on the same repairs for which bills were paid. Do you follow that? According to the Auditor General's report, completion dates on repairs preceded start dates of those repairs, and those bills were paid. Did that ever come before the board as a concern?
Never.
Anybody else has any question? I don't want to be asking. I got about 27 here.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go to page 24, which sought to look at the efforts to improve operations for the Transport Board.
Page 24 of the report.
Page 24 of the report. Number 3.3, the first thing that the Auditor General's report says there is that the board entered into an agreement with a management consultant on the 7th of March. However, they could find no record in the minutes of any discussion by the board at their meeting to agree to such an arrangement. Can you shed some light on the process by which Mr. Bartholomew was engaged?
If you look at the confirmed minutes of meeting 0216 of the Transport Board held on 2016, 0225. The last page was a short one, and the last paragraph, two last paragraphs. At this stage, Ms. Dolores Catwell, Admin Officer, Board Secretary, was excused from the meeting. She was subsequently informed by the chairman that the special project for the repairs of the board's buses was approved, the special project. Then the following day, the general manager wrote the lawyer for Transport Board, and who is Mr. Milton Pierce, you see. And he said there, Mr. Pierce, contract of service document for Mr. David Bartholomew, Fleet Management Consultant. Given the myriad of problems being experienced with our aging fleet, which has resulted in our daily bus availability being reduced to unacceptable levels within recent months, the Board of Directors at a meeting held on Thursday, February 26, agreed to engage the services of a qualified fleet management consultant, then for a period of 6 months, etc.
That seems a little strange to me. Was there any reason why the board secretary would have had to leave with a discussion on a special project that you were going to implement? There was something highly secretive about the discussions?
No, as far as I can recall.
Okay. And for the discussion, for the board discussion, I would assume that a project paper would have been prepared outlining what the special project was about, the terms of reference, the things that you would have needed done, etc. Because if I'm understanding you correctly, while the board secretary was out, was when the decision was taken to give Mr. Bartholomew the contract, but certainly board papers would have had to come forward outlining that project, outlining the persons that you were considering, Were there more than one person considered for the position?
Mr. Bartholomew came in 2015, and he gave an assessment of what was needed in respect of the repairs of the buses. And based on his training, oh, I have it here. The proposal for fleet management solution 2016. This was just one of them, which he just submitted. And there was another one which anyhow, he came in before and he had an assessment of the buses, and he came to the board and discussed what was to be done. And based on his experience and his talent, and more particularly, he was here before to solve the problem, he was asked about the contract.
I'm a little puzzled because earlier you said that these same problems had existed back in 1998 and they continued. So I'm just puzzled then as to why only Mr. Bartholomew was considered.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
He came down and sorted them out about the redevelop in 1998.
Also, they were resolved when he first came in 1998, and the problems reoccurred again? That's what you're saying? No, I thought that you were suggesting that that the problem had continued since 1998. But going back to the question, our understanding from the board secretary was that if something of a very private nature was going to be discussed, I'm not quite sure what would fit into that category, she would be asked to leave the room, but on return, she would be given the results of the discussion. And from what you read there in the minutes, it did not seem as though it was communicated to her to record in the minute that Mr. Bartholomew had been selected as the person to get the management consultancy to come and rectify the issues that the Transport Board was experiencing. Was there any particular reason why she was not given that information when she returned to the room?
Not as far as I can recall, because this is 2016, 4 years ago.
Okay. And could you, I think you said that you weren't sure why she was not in the room?
I am not too sure.
Not sure why she was in the room. Okay. Now, in that same report, the Auditor General at 3.5 said that the decisions that had been taken by the board needed to benefit the Transport Board and should have a high chance of percentage of being successful. But apparently the special project, which officially started in 2016, had experienced some difficulties. And one of the things that would have been very important for the success of the program was the ability to have the spare parts necessary for Mr. Bartholomew to be able to get more buses on the road. Because I think you indicated that by 2016 you were at 67 buses and you really needed a fleet of near 200 to be able to satisfy the public. It seems strange to me, and perhaps you could explain the process by which the board would have decided to implement the consultancy when the problem of the availability of spare parts had not been resolved. If you could explain to the committee for our benefit.
All that I'm saying to you, you have to look at it in a holistic way, don't compartmentalize it. If the buses were to be increased, there are minor parts which could have been purchased. And with the dedicated effort of everybody on board, we would have reached the 100 and whatever. I have here from, this is what Bartholomew gave me some time ago when I was there. This is what he had as the rollout per month, and it was over 120 for July. It reached 120 over here, July, August, September. It was
And this was what year?
2016. 140 in September. These are line graphs. And all I'm saying, in November it was 130, but 137, yes. And all Bartholomew was saying, those buses which were overheating, you had to wash the radiators, change filters, service them, and they'll be back to normal. But if you didn't wash them, if you didn't change the filters, if you didn't put on the heat shield, which you recommended since 2014, they're going to overheat, and then they will drop out of circulation. So PM was very important, planned maintenance, and that is what wasn't being done.
I believe, thank you for that response. I believe the report reflected that one of the major problems that the board was actually having was with the transmissions, both in terms of the frequency of changes, that there were a number of buses that got transmissions every 6 months. You had problems of the transmissions breaking down, and it represented a major cost to the transport board. You had pointed out, I believe, in your last testimony that Mr. Bartholomew had been able to save some funds for the board by approaching one of the spare parts by cleaning the brushes and putting them back in rather than throwing away this particular part that I believe you said cost $2,500, and that you could change the brushes for $100, and you had pointed out how much he had saved. But the problem that we'd identified last time was that on the issue of the transmissions, Mr. Bartholomew did not seem to pick up on that problem, which I believe had cost the board somewhere in the vicinity of, I think it was $10 million that would have been overspent.
10 million.
Is it 10?
No. I think that between 2010 and 2018, $10 million would have been spent, I believe.
We'll get the correct amount, but last time you did not indicate that Mr. Bartholomew had been able to identify the problem of the transmissions, and therefore, when I say the problem of the transmissions, not that they weren't breaking down, but the excessive costs that were being undertaken by the board by continuing to buy from the local supplier rather than buying from the overseas supplier. If we take your figure of 35,000 versus the 7,000, that is a significant difference.
As I had told the committee last time, the information was not given in a tabular form, and it would be difficult to pick up how many went per year or per month or whatever. The only time that I or the board saw a tabular form was from one provider. And in terms of transmissions, in 2010, 56 transmissions were installed, 2011, 52, 2012, 63, 2013, 46, 2014, 39, 2015, 37, and 2016, when the project started, 20 were installed.
But that's,
Sorry, sorry, 20 field, 2016.
but that still does not explain to the committee why it was that this overpayment for transmissions was not picked up, seeing that you had a special project that was designed specifically, one, to get buses back on the road, to save costs, because you'd indicated that the minister had outlined that he could no longer supply the transport board with continuous cash, that it needed to reduce its expenses. So the question is, why did Mr. Bartholomew, the management, and the board not pick up on this glaring omission that was costing the board millions of dollars?
I think.
Sorry, it wasn't 10 million, it was 2 million. It's there on page 14.
That question should be addressed to the financial control, because I do not know anything about that. It was never brought to the board's attention. So whether they pay 1 million, 2 million, the board would never know if it wasn't brought.
All right, we'll come back to Minister Husbands if she doesn't might want to cut you off there, Minister, to give Minister Walker the chance to ask for a couple of bits of clarification.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Wiltshire, my good friend, how are you? Good to see you.
Likewise.
Some clarification, though. You threw the committee to a board minute of the 25th of February 2016 in relation to the contract for Mr. Bartholomew. But when I read the minutes of that meeting, it said that the chairman informed members that he was asking permission to defer this board meeting to be convened in 2 weeks' time, as there were very pertinent issues to be discussed which are affecting the board. Members unanimously agreed to this decision. So the board meeting was deferred.
Which one?
The same one you're speaking about, the one that you referred to. Minutes of meeting number 2/16 of the Transport Board held on the 25th of February 2016. It has all of 2 pages. So the chairman informed members that he was asking permission to defer this board meeting to be convened in 2 weeks' time, as there were very pertinent issues to be discussed which are affecting the board. Members agreed. At this stage, Mrs. Dolores Catwell was excused. She was subsequently informed by the chairman that the special project for the repairs of the board's buses was approved. I'm asking, you said the meeting was, you asked permission to defer the meeting. You excused the executive, the administrative officer, secretary, and then she was subsequently informed. So there was a meeting of the board, or there wasn't a meeting?
There was a meeting of the board, but then it was...
It was not an official meeting then, because you asked that it be deferred.
Well, it was a part of a short meeting.
The minutes of the 17th of September 2016. It commenced, again, it's a 2-page. It commenced at 5:40. It ended by 6:45. The chairman informed members that he was reliably informed that they had been reappointed as members of the board. I take it this is after the 3-year period had passed. He thanked them for their support and looked forward to working with them again. The administrative officer, board secretary, was excused from the meeting. The chairman informed the extension of contract. I don't know when she was informed or how she was informed. The chairman informed by the administrative officer that the members had agreed that the fleet management consultant, Mr. David Bartholomew's contract should be extended for a further 3 months. So I get the impression in reading these so-called minutes that there is some mysticism or secrecy about Mr. Bartholomew's contracts. Because in the first one where you cited where he was awarded it, we are not certain if this was a meeting, discussion between you and one board member, you and 5 board members, you and 2 board members. It just says she was excused and she was subsequently. For the extension of the contract, you welcome the members of the board, the secretary was excused, and then the minutes say extension of contract, the chairman informed. It doesn't speak of any discussion. In the minutes then of the 9th of March 2017, the whole thing erupts on page 3, discussion about the extension of Mr. David Bartholomew's contracts. Members voiced the concern that they were not informed of the extension of Mr. Bartholomew's contracts. And it was also stated that decisions about this matter were made without prior knowledge of the members. So, Mr. Witcher, I am confused in terms of this Mr. Bartholomew, and if members were discussing it, if they were agreeing to it. And certainly reading the minutes in 2017, there seems to be a whole set of a confusion. You indeed had to apologize to members and withdraw some statement. Help me. And while you're doing that, I am concerned.
Mr. Bartholomew's contract?
Before you go on, just so that you can get your thoughts together. 26th of November 2015, went through the process of going to a bank to get a term sheet and seeking to get $4.2 million to purchase U-Town buses. In December 2016, in the minutes of the 8th of December 2016, there's a report about a trip to China, and a decision is made to purchase buses from a different company. Were these buses ever purchased? What happened to the term sheet from the previous year to buy U-Town buses? So just to stimulate your thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No buses were purchased. When we went to China, the U-Town buses, they were more expensive than the one which we
I may cross you, but the board had already made a decision the previous year to purchase U-Town buses. So there was no analysis, there was no look at the cost of them, there was no comparison.
So the board made, go over that, please. I don't have my minutes here. It is?
2016, is that? 15.
30th of July. Which number? Which one are you talking about?
July.
It's July, yeah.
What's the date? The date.
30th of July 2015.
30th or 30th?
30.
30th.
Mm-hmm.
Young Mike, sorry.
Which one? Purchase?
Dr. Walker, Young Mike.
Let us make easy. Let's go to August, the month right after. The General Manager 3.8, page 3, informed members that she had instructed Mrs. F. Sue, the Financial Controller, to invite submissions for the procurement of 3.5 million Barbados dollars in the loan, blah, 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 blah. This loan would be for the purchase of 15 U-Town buses. So the board had agreed to purchase these buses. And on the 26th of November that year, I believe it was, 1511, page 4.3, paragraph under 4, purchase of U-Town buses. The chairman that she had sent the board members by round robin a date, a document, and this highlighted the indicative term sheet of $4.2 million for the purchase of these buses. I'm asking if the board under your chairmanship had made a decision, you obviously done that, to purchase U-Town buses without having done an assessment or an analysis, etc., based on what was then done 1 year later in terms of a visit to China, and on what basis the board would have made a decision to purchase these buses in the absence, and to get a term sheet, in the absence of having the analysis. But you can come back to that after you explain in terms of the seemingly irregularities or the board members not too sure about Mr. Bartholomew and the way that his contract has been or was being renewed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Which one is that now, with Bartholomew?
Mr. Bartholomew is supposed to be 2 meetings on one page. The one on the 26th, the 25th of February, where you asked that the board meeting, where you, meeting of the 25th of February 2016, when you asked that the board meeting be deferred and to convene in 2 weeks' time. And then the minutes go on to say that Ms. Catwell was excused, and she was subsequently informed by the chairman that the special project for the repairs of the board buses was approved. I don't know if there was a meeting then. I was asking if you had met with 1 or 2, if the board had been dispersed after you asked that the meeting be deferred. And I don't know when you inform about the project. I don't know. The minutes, this is the minutes of the board meeting.
As far as I know.
And then in September,
Let me
the
finish
same
one.
thing happened again.
Right.
In terms, and then later then we have it in 1 year later, 9th of March 2017, coming to a head with the board members expressing concern about how these contracts are being renewed.
Which page is that? No, the last one.
The last one, the minutes of the 9th of March 2017,
2000. Hold on. 2018?
17.
2017, that they were not informed.
All right, hold on. 2017, what number?
The first meeting, March the 9th, 2017, members voiced the concern that they were not informed of the extension of Mr. Bartholomew's contract. It was also stated that decisions about this matter were made without prior knowledge of the members. Mr. Pandor raised the concern that there were no meetings for a while, no reports from Mr. Bartholomew were received, and that bus availability was lower despite the promise by Mr. Bartholomew of 200 buses. Said that members were not involved in the decision-making in the matter of the board, and he said that there were still problems with the non-availability of parts. Then there has the chairman saying that it was a silly contract that was drawn up in his absence, who was unqualified for the post of advisor, and then you subsequently withdrew your thing. So explain to us what's really happening in terms of this contract for Mr. Bartholomew, if this was discussion, if the board agreed,
hold on.
if it was an instruction.
I am here looking at the March one. When I talk about a silly contract, it was 4 point. Right, it was in relation. No. You.
Members voiced concern that they were not informed of the extension of Mr. Bartholomew's contract. It was also said that decisions about this matter were made without prior knowledge of members.
I do not know who extended it, as far as I can recall, but the meeting was about the appointment of Pedro Stanford as not a consultant, I can't remember his post, so I will look for it and get back to you in a minute.
4.3, 4.4, and 4.5 dealt specifically with Mr. Bartholomew. 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 Mr. Bartholomew. Those were the concerns. Anyhow,
Stanford is the 11th.
No, I have to respond to the one there that he said it was a city contract. I went overseas in December, late December. And by the time that I came back, Ms. Sue was acting as the general manager. And I think I went for 9 days. And by the time I came back, Mr. Pedro Stanford was appointed as an advisor. And that is what caused the
And his contract was
promotion. Anyhow,
His
the
contract
board did not
in May.
the board did not know about this contract. When I came back and I asked, half the majority of the board said they did not know.
Stanford's contract.
Initially, the contract had come to the board and it was sent back because Pedro Stanford wanted a contract for 2 years at $12,000 a month. And according to the reports, I wasn't there, they told him no, and it had to be brought back to the board for discussion. It never came back, but a contract was made by the acting general manager, financial controller, who gave him a contract and was paying him $10,000 a month.
Clarification from for my own benefit, certainly, and for others who may be a little bit unsure. Are we talking about Mr. Stanford's contract or Mr.
No.
Bartholomew's contract?
He says,
Mr. Chairman, I was asking about Mr. Bartholomew.
You're
But I believe-
responding on Mr. Stanford's.
I was
Minister
talking
or
about that when I
Mr.
said it was a city
Bartholomew's
contract. I said it was a city contract. I remember that night deliberate clearly. And you're referring to 4. Which one is that? I wouldn't see here 4-1 speedometers unless I'm looking at a different one.
4 of the 9th of March.
The 9th of March, January, March.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please.
Page 3, the minutes of the Transport Board, from the 9th of March.
For extension of the members' voice
Right.
concerned, they were not informed of the extension of Bartholomew's contract.
And
What is-
I'm trying to get some clarity from you in terms of the awarding of this contract, because the board meeting that you said it was done at speaks of the meeting having been aborted, deferred. So there was no actual board meeting.
There was a
Well,
board.
the minutes said the meeting was deferred. That's what the minutes are saying.
Well, let me explain. We had a meeting. I can't remember what came up in addition to Bartholomew's contract, but I told them in order to investigate a bit further about that matter, we would defer the meeting and come back later. That was the reason why it was deferred.
Still seem to go on.
But then it says the minutes said the meeting was deferred. And you're stating that the meeting, that you all discussed and had some things. I mean, decisions
was
made
short.
in a meeting that is deferred? It
I
doesn't seem
don't
right
know
to me.
what was written.
But you
can't do
just
that.
read from it. You drew us to it, that's why I saw it, because it said that the chairman informed members that he was asking permission to defer this meeting to be convened in 2 weeks' time. Then it went on to say members unanimously agreed to this decision. So they agreed with your suggestion that the meeting be deferred. Then we are told that Mrs. Catwell was excused. So I gather this is the time when you're going to have some refreshments and the meeting's over, the meeting is deferred. So the board secretary is excused, and this is the point in time when you have refreshment, you eat, you drink, and you chit-chat because the meeting is ended. And then the minutes come back to say she was subsequently informed by the chairman. Was it that day? Was it 10 weeks later? The minutes were confirmed in May, 3 months later. It doesn't, I don't know. And then when you come
All right,
to
no,
when you
don't rush the
come
brush, don't rush the
to
brush.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to use all my time because Mr. Wiltshire just mentioned, but he was away, and it raised something in me because in the board minutes of 2000, I really want to go back. In 2015, 19th of March 2015, there was the issue of a trip to Mexico.
Mexico.
Yes. I see here 19th of March 2015. Transport Ticketing Americas Conference and Exhibition. 4142. The board would be expected to cover the expenses of its officials. Members agree that no one from the board should attend this conference because of the precarious cash flow at the board. The meeting was chaired by the chairman, Mr. Anthony Wiltshire. Right? You with me?
I'm listening.
The 19th of March, 2015, the very next meeting chaired by Mr. Anthony Wiltshire. The board still in a precarious position. The board reverses its opinion and resolved that the chairman should attend the conference. So I take it that the conditions improve. Mr. Wiltshire, the precarious conditions improve within 1 month.
That's subjective.
I'm following the minutes.
Well,
I am following the minutes.
well, everything it isn't.
I am following the minutes. I am following the minutes. So I'm just asking you, because you chaired both meetings, so. And then we came to the 19th of May 2016. And there's a trip to Europe. There's a trip. As I said, you just roused my curiosity because you said you were there in Brazil. There was a trip to Germany, and the cost is $19,000. And members of the board were querying the reason for the trip at this time when the board was cash-strapped. But you were going on this trip. There were issues. These were repeated issues in terms of the perilousness of the financial situation of the board, and you were going on these trips.
Pardon me?
Based on the minutes, there were issues in terms of the perilous finances of the transport board and the trips that you were making, because it's here in the minutes where they're querying the reason for this trip when the board was cash-strapped. We had a year before you were going to Mexico. The board said they couldn't afford it 1 month, and the next month it was agreed. Were there issues in terms of you going on trips?
There was only one issue in relation to going to Brazil. And it wasn't about me, it was about Bartholomew. When one board member who took an instant dislike to Bartholomew, he was questioning everything that Bartholomew did. And all Bartholomew was doing was going to Brazil to negotiate lower prices. And if you look at the handout which I had given you, you will see what the costs the transport board was paying to a local provider and what benefits or reduced costs we negotiated. In addition to that, we also negotiated an emergency, I think it is an emergency invoice, they call it, where if a bus breaks down and you needed to get parts quickly, you email all the parts, provided it does not go over $10,000 US, and provided it was small enough to be shipped by FedEx. You would get the parts without making a down payment, but there was a proviso that it had to be paid within 30 days. When I was there, I used to make sure that it was paid in 30 days, but since I left, they have not been paying according to the agreement. And I got an email from the said company stating that they owed the said company, Transport Board owed the same company. Just a minute, sir. $18,571.94. And as of July 20th this year, it was 540 days over. So they refused to pay the said company, even though they were getting parts at a much reduced price.
If I may interject on the Brazil trip, in the context of the queries that Mr. Minister Walker is raising, the Brazil trip was not paid for by the Transport Board.
No.
It was paid for by the company you were actually in Brazil you were going to negotiate with.
That's right.
And the board had no qualms on that the company you were going to negotiate with would actually be paying your costs?
Well, one member raised it, but I made it clear to him that that is business. If you invite somebody, don't pay the airfare, at the end of the day, you can make $10, $15 million in sales. What you pay as an airfare, that would more than cancel.
Well, but that's looking at it from the company side. But looking at it from the board side, there are no qualms about a company paying your expenses, the same company with whom you're going to negotiate prices.
There was only one person who spoke about that. And I had to make it clear to him that I see no good reason why we should not go. They want to get parts at a cheaper rate. And this was something this company had offered to the Trinidadian government through Bartholomew.
And the finances of the board were still in a part of state.
Pardon me?
The finances of the board were still in an unhealthy state.
Well, I'm not too sure, but I believe so.
Okay.
But at least we have an alternative.
You finish? You finish? Are you finished? Minister Walker? Mr. Wiltshire, you were telling us a little bit about the nullification of Mr. Stanford's contract. You seem to have an issue with his contract. Some people have an issue with his contract as well.
Yes.
Can you briefly speak to that?
Well, first of all, when I came back and I discovered that Mr. Stanford had a contract, when I look at it, I said it was nonsense because the board did not approve it. It did not have the stamp of the Transport Board on it.
So how did he get his contract, Mr. Wiltshire?
Ms. Sue said she wrote the contract.
Ms. Sue signed off on it?
Ms. Sue signed off on it and she said she did it.
She has the authority to do that?
She was acting general manager. I was not there. I was not there. We had it fairly rough in that boardroom, and I watched man clean of it.
But management, without reference to the board, had the authority to do this, to enter this type of contract?
No, it was partially signed by the board, by a member of the board who was acting for me.
Sorry?
A member who was, the deputy who was acting for me, he signed it, Ms. Sue.
The two of them legally had the authority to do this?
But I got it, I sent the contract to Mr. Pierce, and I would make available the copy of the findings by his, there's what's trying to make.
But it was brought to an end on your return.
It was brought, yeah, well, soon after.
Because it was the view of the board then at that time that it was not a contract properly entered into, or that the terms were ridiculous.
Well, that is what I'm saying. They want to get rid of Bartholomew, and they brought on this guy who was a friend of the FC. And
He's a friend of the financial controller,
right.
Ms.
He was-
Sue.
Ms. Sue. And it created lots of bad blood, causing the board to be split right down the middle.
But this is 2017, Mr. Wiltshire.
Pardon me?
This is 2017
Yeah,
in May. This is a whole year before the election
that's right.
and before the board was changed.
That's right.
So nothing could be done about Ms. Sue if she's that out of order in terms of the conduct of her.
She had her enablers on the board. Let me put it that way.
She had her enablers on the board.
And it was split right down the middle, the board.
Tell me about the tenders committee.
Pardon me?
In the minutes of August of 2017, I think the chairman of the tenders committee is complaining that meetings, or a meeting for sure was held in his absence. The decision was made with respect to tender for services. Would that be a common occurrence where the tenders committee would meet in the absence or without the knowledge of the chairman?
This is easy to write that in a minute. But let me make myself absolutely clear. When I got to Transport Board, the members were being paid for committee meetings. Ms. Catwell told us that they were paid by the last administration, etc. And I thought it strange. And when I checked the payment remunerations of board members, it stated clearly that they are not to be paid, they are to be paid only for a board meeting. A board meeting. So, I stopped the payment. And when I stopped the payment, they stopped coming. Simple as that. They would come to board meetings, and then they would die a natural death only to be resurrected the next board meeting. You don't see them.
So your answer is that the chairman of the tenders committee would not have been present at the board meeting because it was a circumstance relative to not being paid for such meetings?
As far as I know, if all depends, he would have been invited, but they wouldn't come.
We say he wasn't. He didn't have any notice of the meeting.
Well, you gotta be careful. That's all I would say.
What was the position of the board in circumstances where checks were issued by the board for services or products other than those which related to the board? Checks were dispensed for payment against services or products not having anything to do with the board.
Namely, I don't know.
You're not aware of that?
I want to know the services. What? Give me specifics.
No, but are you aware of any instance where checks were dispensed or disbursed by the Transport Board, or checks were written from the Transport Board for payments for services or products not used by the board or not related to the functions. You're not aware of that?
No.
Never came to the attention of the board?
No. I would like to know what were the specifics?
Were you given to the practice of making purchases out of personal funds for the board?
That was in relation to the said project. Let me go back a bit. In 2015, December, the main provider, Simpson Motors, they had owed, Transport Board had owed them in excess of $10 million, and they pulled the plug in relation to credit. So nothing could have been done. January 2016, they offer some respect and only in terms of service of the buses. So they had just a little leeway because in December, the buses are serviced, and that's the reason why the rollout is so pitifully small, because all of the buses came in at the same time, and they had to be registered at the same time and licensed at the same time. In March, the special project was set up. In addition to that, the minister said that, this is finance, that he would start giving money to the Transport Board in relation to having to pay wages, salaries, etc. And after discussions among the board members at the time, we were discussing how best we could resolve the issue. And one board member said we should be able to get a loan. I said no. If the special project is to be functioning, we have to do it expeditiously. And we were, to use a Bajan expression, butting our heads. And I said to them, Bartholomew had submitted a list of tools. And I said to him, I know some of the tools. One was a welding plant. And I said, in as much as it costs $300 in the United States, you can't buy that welding plant down here because the one I bought, and when I look at the price here in Barbados, it was $2,800. And I said, these are extraordinary times which need for extraordinary measures. And I made it clear to them, I got my education through the Democratic Labour Party. I went to Mona 40-something years ago, came back, I did law. I went to Trinidad, all out of the people of Barbados. And I said, I have a card which can accommodate that, and I wouldn't do it. The other member said, no problem. I said, I'm not going to use it willy-nilly. I spoke to the minister, and he said, no problem. He wants to see buses on the road. And I said to the gentleman, if you may recall, Kennedy said, don't ask what America can do for you, ask what you can do for America. And I took that principle, and that is the reason why I did it. And if the situation had occurred and I was chairman, I would have done it again.
All right, two things to clarify for me. You are saying that you use your card, personal funds, by means of card, to make purchase in the States, you said?
In the States and here in Barbados.
Here in Barbados,
because all it was designed for the project.
And that was the amount of what?
Pardon me?
That was to the, or in the amount of what? In the States?
I'm not too sure because there are different times I went.
And different times, so
Yes.
you did it more than one time?
No.
And here locally, do you remember the amounts?
Locally, it wasn't very much. It was workbenches which had to be built according to specification. And that was from Pierce Furniture,
And they would have cost what, approximately?
about $3,100 each.
$3,100 each?
Yes,
And you provided invoices to this to get a refund?
that's right. But let me
And
make it clear.
The second thing I wanted you to clarify for me, you said the minister
Yes,
approved you're doing this?
yes. I told him.
This is the Minister of Public Works and Transport,
That's right. I told him.
Mr. Lashley at the time.
That's right.
He approved this
Yes,
verbally?
because he wanted the buses repaired.
He wrote this or
No.
orally represented, verbally represented?
Yes,
it?
verbally.
The board was okay with that?
As I told you, yes.
The
But-
invoices that you provided suggested this thing, not $3,000, but $6,000 each.
No. 3,000, two threes.
I see 21st of September. What years are you talking about?
I know you have to tell me what that is, what is on it. But there were, I heard Ms. Sue talking about some invoice. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, it was Ms. Sue who requested the invoices because you made the claim without invoices and through the general manager at the time. And when the request was put to Ms. Sue, it was she who requested of the general manager that invoices be provided. That would be correct as far as you're aware?
Pardon me?
The financial controller would have been in receipt of a request from the general manager with reference to reimbursement for yourself for funds used, personal funds used for purchases for transport board equipment. Ms. Sue then asked for invoices to support that. Commented on the fact that the approach by the general manager was not the proper one.
All right. You see, Ms. Sue, she has convenient memory. Ms.
She
Sue?
has, she has a convenient memory.
That's right.
I mean, she remembers only what she wants to remember, or she remembers only
Exactly,
when she
exactly.
wants to remember.
I read her the transcript, and she was saying she was concerned about that. Now, let's go back to the Brazil trip. When we were going to Brazil, normally we would have passed through Miami, but the trip was routed through Colombia. And she did not know.
So how'd you
Anyhow,
get to Colombia?
we went through Colombia. We didn't see any drugs though.
Colombia from where?
Barbados.
We had direct Barbados, Colombia.
Yeah,
We had Barbados direct to Colombia flights.
to Colombia. I can't remember exactly.
Sure, it was in Panama.
Not in Panama, Colombia. We got off in Colombia, and then we got a flight. We got a flight the night about 9 o'clock. We got a flight the night around 9 o'clock, and we got into Brazil.
Yeah, anyhow, go ahead.
Yes. And she is talking about my use of the credit card.
Well, no, I was...
No, I'm just only making a point.
Go ahead.
She gave me, or paid into my account, $5,800. So that when I was coming back up from Brazil, I would have gotten off in Miami. And I would have purchased a pressure washer and another floor unit, scrubbing unit for the transport board. I do not understand. She had issues with that one, with mine, but she didn't have issues when she put money into my account. And how would I pay for a pressure washer unless I use it with the credit card? You take my point.
But I'm not talking about the pressure washer because I don't
No,
have...
but she's blowing hot and cold. She's saying one thing and saying something different. And I have it here that I did not pass through and I paid back the money and she signed off on it.
What I'm saying, or what I was attempting to say, Mr. Wiltshire, is I don't have documents that speak to that,
But I can pass this here.
which I'm aware, but I'm speaking to the matter that you raised yourself. You talked about acquisition of pieces of equipment from Pierce's Furniture,
Yes.
which you valued at about $3,000 each,
No, I didn't value it. I did not value it. I said
which
it
were
cost
invoiced at $3,000 each.
31,
The invoices I have says $6,000 each.
$6,000 each. You sure didn't have two at the side?
I can only tell you what I see on the invoice, and your signatures on it. One is the 21st of September in 2016. And the other one is the 30th of January in 2017. And you've signed on that. And I know your memory.
I would find
I
it.
know your memory is not convenient. You remember well.
Yeah, but anyhow, I will look for it. I will explain that. The issue was tables, I mean benches. Those benches were not like school benches or the benches which people sit on the tree to roast breadfruit. They had to be built according to specification.
But why would you be paying for them in Barbados? It is different from what you explained earlier, passing through Miami or
The point is that when I went to Pierce, they had to make a deposit instantly in order to get the tables within a specific time.
But why would you, as chairman, be the person going to Pierce? You are in Barbados.
Never mind that. I was looking after the project.
But I have to mind that, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, you have to. But the point is, it was paid for. It was legitimate, and I got back my money.
All right.
That is the issue.
Were you the only person on the board who did this?
Yes.
And you are insisting that the minister at the time approve this?
That's right. And when Bartholomew made a presentation this was before the Prime Minister, about what benefits the project was yielding, I spoke to the Prime Minister about it, and he said, all you have to do is make sure you get back your money.
So the Prime Minister approved it after the fact?
Yeah, but
Approved of it?
The point is that it was done with the interest of Transport Board. I didn't do it to get any fame or fortune. I mean, make it clear.
Okay.
I didn't carry anybody's money. I did not get even the interest on it.
And I'm not suggesting that at all, Mr.
No, but
Wilson.
you are questioning me. But then again, let me make it clear. Money is personal property. You have a constitutional right to property, all right? Therefore, if I have $10, I can give it away, I can't do anything. It does not lay in the mouth of John Brown, Mary Jane to tell me what to do. That's what I'm saying.
And that is true, but you are working for an entity which
Yes.
has policies and procedural
Policy and procedures.
guidelines which ought to be followed in the interest of proper accountability, standards in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you would also agree with that. And if these matters come to the attention of the committee while we were perusing the minutes, then we have to raise them with you, because you had a financial controller who saw this as a bit at odds with what was accepted procedure. You had a general manager seemingly acting at odds with what would be the required procedure, and the chairman of the board is the subject of the issue. So it is from that perspective that we raise it with you. You have further told us that the minister at the time, and you repeatedly said that, gave you leave to do this.
And
But we are at 5:05. I don't want to go beyond 5:15 because
no.
our official quitting time is 5. So we go 10 more minutes. I don't know, Minister
No,
Jordan,
but-
Senator Nurse, Minister Husbands, Mr. Trotman, go ahead.
But before you go, in Bartholomew's report, he mentioned about the said tools. Equipment/tools were purchased through the intervention of the chairman, a saving of approximately $103,000 for the full implementation of the PM program, that is planned maintenance. So who get the benefit? Not me, Transport Board.
So you're saying because of your intervention and making payments on behalf of the board, it saved 100 and...
3,000,
So how much money did you actually spend,
I
Mr.
can't
Wiltshire?
recall right now.
Ballpark figure? How much money out of your personal funds would you have actually?
No. It's personal from budget credit card. I think about 80,000, something like that.
So you spent from your personal funds via credit card
Yes,
$80,000 in the
About that,
interest of the
something like that.
transport board?
that's right.
And the minister approved that?
He didn't know the amount. He wanted, in the
He
beginning,
approved without
Hold on.
knowing the amount?
he said, go get the tools. And
Without asking the amount?
no. At the time, I was going, and he approved my going.
He approved your going and your purchase of the tools
That's
using your credit card?
Yes,
Money was advanced to your credit card by the transport board?
they were paid into when I came back.
Sorry?
It was paid into my account when I came back.
On your return, so it came
No,
from
when-
your
when-
funds?
When I came back and the tools came, they were checked. And
Mr. Wiltshire, you're telling the committee that you spent $80,000 as the chairman of the transport board in the interest of the transport board, by extension, the people of Barbados, providing a service for the people of Barbados, and that your spending was approved by the minister, and that you were compensated on your return $80,000
I said over a period of time, I said.
over a period of time. Okay. Mr. Trotman.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Wiltshire, the report essentially was about assessing the performance of the transport board over a 5-year period. You were chairman at the time. Various aspects of the report would indicate that, the whole issue of the bus availability went down to 50. The revenues were declining rapidly. 2014, it was about $41 million, and by 2018, it was about 26. The ridership, or the amount of trips, were 21 million in 2013-14, and the transport board was going down about 2 million, losing about 2 billion trips per year. So overall, it didn't appear that the performance of the transport board was pretty dismal over the period in which you were chair. So you want to give us some sort of idea as to what you think, that it was going in the direction it was going. I know that the board would have done some efforts, because we have a whole chapter 3, in terms of different things that you would have done to improve the operations of the transport board. Nevertheless, the transport board was going downhill pretty quickly, and over the same period, the transport board would have gotten like $200 million in subsidies and about another $170 million in revenue. So about $400 million or so the transport board would have had at its disposal over the 5-year period or what, 4 or 5 year period. Yet still, all the indicators were heading downwards. Do you want to give an idea as to why you think so?
I will not hazard a guess. I think that is for the financial controller. She will know what monies went out, how much, and what they were spent in the various sums. So I won't be able to answer you adequately on that.
Oh, yeah, we
So
were not.
you can refrain that.
Yeah,
Refer that to her.
no problem. We were not just talking about finances, though. We were talking about the whole issue of the operational efficiency of the operation as
Yeah,
well.
but I am only the chairman. I go there once. Well, I keep meetings once a month. I am not employed by Transport Board.
Right.
So it have to be the manager, the various, the general manager, the various kinds of managers.
So tell me something, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wiltshire. In terms of the board and its function, you know, you were the chairman of a previous board, you know, you were the chairman of the transport board. So what would you thought was the function of the board? I just want to make sure. And if you thought that you had at your disposal as the board, the resources, whether it's management, operational, whatever, what do you see yourself as trying to achieve?
Normally, a chairman has to carry the policy of the government.
Sure.
Good. And when you go to an institution, you put in the hard work, you do your utmost to get it turned around. I must remind you, the transport board is highly unionized. And we had also a large group who supported the opposition. And no matter what we do to bring the transport board out of the economic doldrums, we are not given support. In addition to that, you find that anything which was done was inflated. For example, going back to the project now, transmissions, $23,000. Fuel injection pumps, that cost, the kits cost $100, $1,500. And those kinds of ridiculous figures.
So tell me, Mr. Richard, obviously you faced a lot of challenges, but did you think that you had any power to do anything about the particular issues that you faced?
I found out in the latter days, as I stressed.
Okay, so in
the latter days.
And only in the latter days that you would have realized what the challenges that you face?
Because you do not expect a big man or woman to come and lie to you or mislead you.
Okay.
Somebody in a responsible position. That's what got me angry about all these statistics here.
So tell me something. You were of the view that you had the talent or the resources in terms of the board and in terms of management to actually carry out a good job in terms of the transport board?
If I had the talent?
No. If the board had at its disposal the financial, technical, and amongst the board itself, the type of talent to carry forward to improve the operations of the board?
Yes, if all had worked together. Yes, I was here.
You would say you had enough. Yeah. So you were, apart from the FC, you were not dissatisfied with any other operational aspects of the corporation?
Quality assurance.
So you had a challenge with the quality assurance and the financial.
Those are two jugular veins of any institute of transport board.
Right. But then you also mentioned that you had issues with the board itself, that half was kind of split.
Yeah.
Right. Then you mentioned that you had problems with people not being loyal. You mentioned that you had problems with sabotage.
That's right.
Right.
Not only the board sabotage, I mean, Quality assurance, quality assurance.
Quality assurance, right? So, so the point is that here is that you have a complex operation to run, which is the transport board. We know of it. You're aware of the challenges that you face, I presume.
I wasn't aware when I came in, but it developed.
Right.
They developed, rather.
Right. So the issue then will be what plan of action the board would have had to address these things.
I am saying again, these things only developed in the 2017. The board was working very well. All right, from 2014, we went to 2013. By the last year, 2017, sorry, that is when everything went downhill.
But Mr. Mitchell, with all due regard, if you look at all the indices I pointed out to, they were going downhill year after year. The amount of people who were using the transport board was declining at 2 million trips per year. It happened in 1 year.
You have statistics in front of you. I don't have them. And I told you I don't work at transport board. So why are you badgering me about statistics?
I'm not badgering you.
No, don't do that. I'm only telling you I don't work at transport board. The people who are supposed to come here would be the general manager or the managers. I only get information once a month.
But what is the function of the board? And I'm trying to understand. You don't work at transport board. You're the chairman.
Yes.
Exactly. How do you fit
Give
into
directions. We can't. Basically, we should not be micromanaging.
Right. No problem
Right.
with that. But being aware that you're declining, I mean, it's obvious.
Wasn't.
You're not aware that they had long wait times.
I wasn't.
The fact that you had to bring in the fleet manager would indicate
it went down
that
in 2016.
Yeah. But that would have indicated that there were issues.
With quality assurance.
Right.
Yes.
So you're not aware that the bus fleet was being depleted?
It was going down the bus fleet, yes, but the quality assurance. But the other statistics about ridership, I'm not familiar with.
You think that you should be aware? You think that the board should be aware of the operations and how the operations are performing and have some sort of indicator?
That's an ideal situation.
But
in an ideal situation, but if you're not getting it, it can't be ideal.
Yeah,
other than ideal.
But did the board ask for it?
Did the board ask for everything we were doing, other things?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Trotman. Mr. Wiltshire, as chairman of the board, did you receive copies of the minutes of management meetings?
Yes, I would have received, but I don't have any here.
Do you have them anywhere?
I should say I don't have them here with me, but I do not know if I can put my hands on them because I destroyed quite a bit of them.
Okay. Would you be able to advance any reason as to why Ms. Sue would give the board inflated figures in every instance, according to you?
I really don't know.
Okay.
Cannot tell you because even in here under the pain of a fine of $5,000 or imprisonment, she's still misleading this committee. She said she was never a general manager, and I have acting general manager. I have about five authorizations here, or so 3 or 4, 5 or whatever, that she acted in 2014 and all of that. The first time she acted by tricking me.
What would have been the circumstances around her leaving the transport board? Would you?
Pardon me?
Did that take place at your time?
Pardon me?
She left the transport board.
She actually left.
I'm asking you.
I don't know.
I thought that was the case.
No. I don't know anything about Miss Sue leaving.
You know nothing about Miss Sue.
I don't know nothing about Sue. I can't tell you what happened in my tenure.
All right.
I know she. I think I picked up something that she was suspended. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
So
we're up to and after 5:15. So I really won't let you go unless a burning question, a brief one, a quick one. Anybody? And we'll have to have you back next week, God willing, unfortunately.
Pardon me?
We'll have to have you back next week.
Next week, Monday?
Next week, Monday.
I have to check my
Well, that's the date we're setting. We want to be able to get through with your testimony and get beyond it. I want to thank you for coming this afternoon and for answering our questions, for giving the detail that you have. I wish you a good evening.
Likewise,
Thanks to the members of the committee and members of the Parliament staff.
Okay, cheers.